Greetings, everyone. Welcome to my sketchbook. Thought I'd take a moment and show you these two coins. So last few days we had two different celebrations. Here in Canada we had July 1st, and in the US they had July the 4th. So of course, Independence Day and Canada Day, pretty exciting stuff. Here in Canada, if you were to look at, now these are discontinued type things, so I mean, they're still legal tender. The pennies from either country. In Canada, if you were to rotate this coin in order to see the image upright that's on the other side, you would do so on the vertical axis. So the north-south axis, you would rotate it like this. That's how you would see the upright image on the other side. US coin's a little bit different, of course. If you want to see the image on the other side in upright fashion, you would do so end over end, rotating on the horizontal, like this, which I think is kind of interesting. But you would do that. That's on the east-west axis. How interesting is that? I think that's interesting. Of course, my favorite coin out of the US is the $50. And I like this coin a lot. It has the seal of the President of the United States, POTUS, of course. And if you want to see the image on the other side, you would flip the coin thusly. So that's JFK on the other side. Pretty cool. Here, I'm going to do a doodle as it relates to Supergirl once again. So that movie was actually released June 26th. And I think it's kind of being treated a little bit differently than a lot of movies that I can think of. For whatever reason, there's been a lot of really strange negative reviews done by people who didn't see the movie, which I don't understand how that really happens. I read the comic probably a year after it came out, so I'm going to say towards the end of the pandemic, maybe like 2023, probably when I would have read it. Anyway, it's a beautiful comic book and very different from the movie. And I'll tell you a secret, I'm kind of glad it is different. I don't know if I would have as much of an appreciation for the movie if it kept everything that was in the comic book. I don't like movie adaptations that are very similar to the comic or movie. What am I saying? To the original material. I don't like movies that are super close to that. Because as somebody who would have read the material first, I don't get the surprise that everyone else does, if that makes sense. The main story, the main plot, I think it's good if they change certain elements of the story, but keeping the story intact, that's obviously the ideal thing. The Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, in its comic form, what goes on with that is that it's meant to take place over a lot of time. So like months go by before you get any sort of resolution of sorts. Whereas in the movie itself, well, you kind of want things to sort of finish up within a certain amount of time, and you want there to be a certain amount of satisfaction, I guess you could say. So I decided I'm going to draw the main character of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Now, I don't have any references in front of me, so I'm going to do this kind of out of my memory, I guess you could say. It may not look exactly like the actress who plays this character, but that's okay. We'll see what happens in my head, I suppose. The main character of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, in my mind, is Ruthye. Ruthie is also, in the comic, the narrator of the story. She's drawn completely differently than what you see from the movie because, well, an actual person plays Ruthie in the movie. But in the comic, she's drawn by Bilkis Evely and colorist, I think it's Matthias Lopez, and kind of almost like an Art Deco kind of thing going on. Has elven like ears, is humanoid, but not of this earth. So, very interesting though. In the comic book world of the story, as I said, it takes place over a lot of time. So, Supergirl and Ruthie actually they hang out, trying to hunt down the bad guy, uh, and they have adventures along the way. Uh, the story arc kind of skips outside of Ruthie's story, which is that of uh, a family tragedy at the hands of someone named Krem of Yellow Hills, which is how we kind of meet up with Ruthie in her story. Um, she actually goes on search for a, a bounty hunter, which is how she ends up running into Supergirl. Now, what's funny about Kara or Kara Zor-El is you don't hire Supergirl as a bounty hunter. That's not something that Kara would be doing. That's not, you don't hire a hero like that to be a bounty hunter. So she needed different stakes in order to involve herself in Ruthie's story. Normally, characters like Ruthie are considered background characters, and um, I'm not saying that they're insignificant. They're just they're not the heavy players in the comic book world, if that makes sense. Same goes with the villain in Ruthie's story is basically just well a background villain, like but somebody that really did something terrible to Ruthie and Ruthie's family. So, um, yeah, I mean, you do get characters like that in movies and TV shows and that sort of thing, but um, often the heroes carry the main story. And anyway, just kind of rambling on about that, I guess. But Ruthie, in my mind, is the main character. Now, let's see. In the movie, she's played by Eve Ridley, who was in Three Body Problem, which you could find on Netflix. Also adapted from uh, an original story. Ooh, how are we doing with ink on this? Let's see what happens if I go a little bit here. Eve does an awesome job. I highly recommend that you read the comic, Supergirl. Highly recommend that you see the movie. Um, but yeah, I don't really understand the negative reviews that happened with this movie. I don't know if people really don't want there to be like creative uh, creative people doing stuff anymore. I don't know if people just want there to be AI made things. I don't know what's going on with that. So a lot of people are involved in the making of a movie. Uh, different visions, of course, as well. So, yeah, it's really strange what happened with this movie. I I trust anyway that we'll get more of Supergirl in upcoming features. As far as how this is doing in the box office, well, time will tell how merchandising and um, well, all the numbers coming in, how this movie will have done. So we will have to wait and see with that. But as far as other projects coming down, I expect there to be more. And movies like this often rely on those partnering sort of deals anyway. So like toys and merchandise and stuff like that too. So they spend a lot of money on marketing and whatnot as well. Uh, let's see. Now I'm going to try to figure out some part of this device that sits behind. I tried to find something, although you hear me say this often, I don't like to have reference materials in front of me. I tried to find a different picture of the movie prop sword. Um, and it is very similar to what they had in the comic. So I'm kind of using more of the comic for some of it, but not exactly. And I don't have the comic in front of me. So again, this is kind of my own interpretation of that. Let's see. Let's go with one more. It's kind of a pirate sword in some way, almost like an enlarged Bowie knife, like cutting side mainly on one side, so it's not a double or dual edged sword. Um, so it would look like an enlarged or kind of more of a Bowie knife or Bowie, depending on how you want to say that. So I'm not going to actually draw that. I'm just going to leave that sitting over Ruthie's shoulder as if it's still in its sheath. Okay, so that's the doodle. What I'm going to do, I was going to bring out a brush and water, but I don't think it's necessary. And this is, again, just a doodle. So I'm going to see if I can kind of work in a little bit more detail. Just little bits and pieces here and there. The movie itself, you get to miss out on a lot of interesting things that the comic book has, which would be almost unnecessary for you to try to fall into in a 2 hour period. For an example, Ruthye, in the months of traveling with Supergirl, they run into a town called Maypole, and Maypole has, uh, let's call it a terrible history in relation to its citizens and the folks of that town. So have like the blues and the purples. I don't think that would really go onto the screen that nicely and be able to find the resolution that you want within a certain time period. You might be able to do it through exposition, where the characters will sit down and say, during our adventure, we saw this. But to put that on the screen, to take the time to film such a thing, I don't know if that would go over so great. You'd say, well, in the current political climate, in the world, and anyway, I don't think it would be all that great to have that on the big screen. And maybe it's meant to help flesh out who you see Supergirl as, or how you would have Ruthye react to such a thing. I don't know if it's necessary for the story for the big screen, because in the big screen, I mean, think of how we treat social media now. We don't really like to spend a lot of time. Like, for example, I'm about 16 minutes in on this drawing. It's pretty rare for people to sit through longer form videos, even on YouTube. It's kind of a rare thing. So, if you have a movie, you want things to move along a little bit quicker. The movie itself will tell you that, well, we want to have something kind of cleaned up here within a certain amount of time, let's say like 3 hours, even though the movie itself is 2 hours. So you need to move the story along quicker in movies most times, unless you do time jumps, which we don't really get in this movie. So yeah, stories like that inside the story of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. You'd also have the use of magic in the comic. You'd also probably get a little bit more explanation as to how red kryptonite, or the red sun, affects Supergirl, green sun, and of course the yellow sun. I think most people kind of understand Superman and Supergirl's power source. Something, though, I will make a quick little sort of ramble on about is Lobo. I don't know why Lobo is in here. Now, it might have something to do with Ruthye looking for a bounty hunter, and, well, Lobo is a bounty hunter. You do get to see Lobo in the comic, but not the way that you'd see Lobo as being part of the story. He actually shows up in the third comic as an advertisement for a Superman versus Lobo storyline. So that's interesting. I guess you could say that Lobo really does show up in the comic, but why is in the movie? I don't know. But he kind of does that in the DC universe, where he just kind of shows up. Now, I wonder if that is a telling thing, that maybe we'll have more of Lobo, but we'll see a Lobo versus Superman thing. I don't know. That's interesting, I guess, if that's something that they're kind of working on. Oh, I want to add a little bit more kindness to the eyes of little Ruthye. Ruthye, did I say Luthie? Ruthye, from my understanding, is a tribute by name to a niece of Tom King. So that must be kind of a pretty cool thing to see a loved one's name on the screen. I know often I will sit through movies just to see if there are names that are familiar for people that worked on stuff. I like to watch the credits of movies just for fun. I sit through to the very end, and not just because I expect there to be anything extra. This movie doesn't do that. But yeah, to see stuff on the big screen, that is the way. Well, I think that's going to be it. I don't know if I need to ramble on that much more. So yeah, if you get a chance, read the comic, see the movie, and make up your own mind on what you think of how things are supposed to connect Like I said, I don't really want them to be the same. I don't want to see certain things coming along, but this movie needed a different resolution. So, and I think you kind of get it. I think somewhere along the way, someone said, "Well, we can't have time jumps, so we want there to be some sort of satisfaction," which is a weird thing, very different than the comic. But it's funny in that world, you'd have like different means of like punishment for crimes in the comic book world, I should say. And like for example, the Phantom Zone is like a place where you would put criminals, or Arkham if you're Batman, or there's things like that. There's not usually uh, a resolution. There's always a way for the bad guy to get out. So anyway, I don't know what else I should add to this. Name, maybe. Well, I guess I could do it in a different way. But regardless, maybe I'm going to just throw in a little bit of shade here. I'm just going to finish this up. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. Ciao for now.